Happy Pride Month, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the rePROFilm podcast. I'm Asha Dahya, back with another fantastic and eye-opening conversation with filmmakers and experts who we are featuring this month. Because it's Pride, we're excited to highlight a web series titled Who Gets to Parent, which follows queer couple Timmia DeRoy and Pere DeRoy, who share their journey deciding to become parents, navigating the IVF process, and having a child. In this month's periodical, we'll be featuring a couple of episodes from the series, which highlight issues of systemic racism in the medical world, as well as the cultural bias and legislative barriers the couple encounter along the way, being a queer mixed-race couple. For a bit of background, Timmia is a theatre and film developer. She was a founding member of the Trinidad and Tobago Pride Arts Festival, former director for the School of the Arts at the Trinidad Theatre Workshop, and former marketing manager at the Caribbean Tales International Film Festival. Originally from Guyana and now residing in Kansas with her wife, Pere is a doctoral student in the Women, Gender and Sexuality Studies program at the University of Kansas. Pere's current research explores the impact that healthcare systems have on reproductive, pregnancy-related outcomes for queer and trans, Black, Indigenous people of color. So when I mentioned I'm speaking with filmmakers and experts, I'm referring to Timmia and Pere on both accounts. Not only are they incredibly accomplished and smart, they are the experts in their own lived experiences. And this is a narrative we need to see more of in the world, especially when it comes to reproductive decisions. It also feels very timely to be having this conversation as we are seeing a scary uptick in anti-LGBTQ legislation across the nation, especially in Republican-led states. Although Timmia and Pere explain how in Kansas, they were surprisingly able to get IVF as a queer couple because they were married, which, by the way, makes you realize the wide-reaching impact of the need for equal marriage. Across the nation, there are a number of IVF laws that still use a heteronormative definition of infertility that discriminate against the LGBTQ+ community. Timmia and Pere's journey was incredibly difficult, and I am in awe at what they endured, as well as the constant thinking outside the box they had to do. And one of the most fascinating aspects of this conversation for me was the way they both talked about intentional parenting and parent as a verb, not just a noun. As you'll hear in their story, having a supportive community and medical team can make a world of difference. And the couple also recognize the value in representation on screen for others to know what is possible, despite the odds stacked against them. And this is why they made the series. Who gets to parent? I will let Timmia and Pere DeRoy answer this question. Welcome to the rePROFilm podcast, Timmia and Pere. And before we dive into the web series, tell me your story.
First of all, thank you for having us.
Absolutely. We're excited to be here. We're very excited by this series in general. We're so happy that this work is out there in the world and that this spotlight is being cast on reproductive health through film. I just think it's so exciting. So thanks so much for having us.
To start, or just to speak to your question, Timmia and I met at a film screening on the sex industry and sex tourism in the Caribbean. That was the beginning. Basically, she was not living in Toronto at that point. I was now living in Toronto. Moved like a year before or after 2014. I moved to Toronto, and it was a situation where I didn't do anything but just leave the apartment, go to the library, and I did that all through my first year in grad school, and I just got invited to this screening.
So I was working for Caribbean Tales International Film Festival that was based in Toronto. I was living in Trinidad in the Caribbean. I didn't live in Toronto. And we screened a film called Sand Dollars. Well, that's the English name. It's a Spanish language film about the sex industry and sex tourism in the Dominican Republic. And we invited to the film screening. I was the marketing manager and I did all of the sort of outreach and community development work. And we had these really exciting sort of talkbacks after every screening to talk about the content and engage the community. And one of the people we invited for the talkback for this screening was the foremost scholar on sex tourism and sex work in the Caribbean, Kamala Kempadu, who was Pierre's advisor, because she was researching sex trafficking and labor trafficking in the Caribbean. Dr. Kempadu came to the screening and she brought one student with her. Apparently she invited the whole class, but only Pierre
The
came.
student that really didn't go to anything, but that one day I'm like, I'm going to show up today. I'm going to go and change my shirt. I'm going to show up today.
And I remember Pierre was like the last audience member to arrive, right? She was late.
Because I went to change my shirt.
And I was sitting like at the sort of swag booth. We were selling t-shirts and other things and passes and stuff. And I remember looking to my right through the ticket booth where my colleague Hanny was working, selling tickets. And I saw this very cute person standing there looking completely lost. And then, you know, she got a ticket. Well, first of all, she disappeared. Apparently, we were cash only and Pierre had to go up the road to the ATM. So I thought, oh, well, there she's gone. And then she came back and then she came in. And then, Pierre, I'm going to tell a kind of embarrassing story.
Okay,
a little bit of
right
embarrassing story.
Look what we're doing right now. So it's okay. You go right ahead.
So Pierre came into the theater and she has to go past my desk. And Pierre is looking at everything in the room except me. I mean, Pierre's like checking out the walls, the carpet, all the other people. So I could tell that she thought I was cute too. So I was like, I'll check her out after the screening.
Yeah, I noticed her from outside. From outside, I saw her. I'm like, oh my goodness, what's happening here? So I got nervous. But that was in 2015, and we met at this, like, in my opinion, totally random situation. Because I wasn't doing anything. I wasn't even going out or like eating out or whatever. I was just being a good international student, trying to get through things. So 2015, and then 2016 we made it official. We're going to be together, and then 2017 we got married, and we were going to just stay in Toronto. And then one thing led to the next. We moved to Kansas, where Timmia grew up, and
both started grad school at the University of Kansas.
And that's it.
So,
but we did make the decision actually in 2016 to have children.
Yeah, we started talking about having children in 2016. That was really important to me. I always wanted to have children. So when Pierre said she also wanted to have children, I was like, okay, we're going to lock that in.
And let me tell you, and I'll tell you this, I never before 2014 decided on children. I didn't. I grew up in Guyana, South America, Caribbean. I've seen so much maternal deaths or people dying in childbirth. I've seen lots of female-headed households, lots of people who are left parenting, and even when they're single parent households, they don't have enough money because of the ways in which we underpay women, right? So it's not to say that because it's a single parent household they were poor. No, because there were women heading these households. So I saw this real strain on women to parent. If anything goes wrong with the child, it's the mother. If anything goes wrong, it's the female person in the relationship, the feminine person in the relationship. I was like, that's some unnecessary bullshit right here. Sorry. Can I say that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So I already made this decision since probably I was 9 years old, right? To not even look at myself as ever going to parent. And, when I met Timmia and I was on my own and I was just navigating life on my own. And, I'm like, actually, I chose Timmia. When we met, like I tell Timmia, one of the greatest things I feel like in my life is that I actually chose someone and they chose me without trying to persuade me to be with them, feeling pressure that I'm checking a box or to keep my idea of a woman or keep not to be stigmatized or discriminated against. I'm like, this is the first time. And when I started to feel that and I was able to have income to take care of myself and love myself, I actually felt like, oh, I can parent, I can do that. So that's when I made that decision. I told her.
And I promise I didn't pressure Pierre to have kids. She brought it up first. Yeah. And then I was like, oh, okay, yeah, let's do that.
So that was it.
I mean, it's such a big decision and thing to connect on. And I love how your background has a bit of the film world and grad school and and parenting, the mutual decision to parenting, because it is such a big decision for anyone. Pierre, you mentioned where you came from and what you see, and today in America, the statistics that we see around maternal health are also not great, which we'll get into in a little bit. But parenting is definitely a hard and a big decision, but documenting that in a web series is a whole other level of vulnerability. Tell me, what made you want to make this web series, Who Gets to Parent, and document your journey to parenthood?
So the moment we decided that we wanted to do that, we actually talk about a little bit in episode 4, which will be part of the screening. And it was when we were with our primary healthcare provider, and she was very blatantly racist towards Pierre with a big smile on her face, as though she was, being
it was
pleasant,
normal,
not racist at all.
Because it is normal.
Exactly. And after that, that was what they call it, the catalyst.
Like the stick that broke the camel's back.
The straw that breaks the camel's back. Yep.
Yeah, that moment, and that was 2018. So let me give you this timeline. So when Timmia and I decided in 2016 we were gonna have, we were living in Toronto. We had rights to like marriage, and same-sex relationship were like recognized. So we didn't think that we were ever gonna move. So I was there, and so 2016, 2017, 2018, that's when we talked to our provider.
And is this in Kansas or still in Toronto?
This is because we moved to Kansas. Oh, it was
in 2017.
We moved
2017.
To Got it. 17, right? So 2018, we realized that, this is going to be a very difficult journey, right? Because we couldn't get easy support or even stories of support from the people that we knew, because no one was really using assisted reproductive technology, or if they had something to say, it was a matter of, why y'all want children in this world? Why y'all don't adopt? They're already telling us. So it seems like the best people to go to get support was the physician or the health practitioner. So in 2018, we decided to start this journey officially, and we approached our health provider, and what she said, and she asked a question, so who's going to carry? And we said Timmia, and then she said, why wouldn't you let Pierre carry? Because Pierre has hips and like African ancestry.
Oh my gosh. She said something about, because of your Afro-Caribbean ancestry means that you have good childbearing hips or something.
Oh,
right.
Oh my gosh.
And she says it with a big smile on her face. She was trying to be nice. And, as you mentioned, I make films and develop films and do theater, and Pierre is a consummate researcher of all topics. I always joke Pierre learned everything she knows from a book. And so we decided, well, let's use our skill set to build community, because we are the first of our friends in queer same-sex relationships to pursue parenthood, and the first that we know to do it in the way that we did. This wasn't a charted path that we'd learned from somebody else, and it was very isolating and at times scary. And, we thought, well, we might as well turn the struggles that we're having into something positive by sharing this with others and helping others take the journey that we took in a way that has some guidance, like we weren't seeing anybody else having created the content to chart through the kind of IVF journey that we were on. So we thought, well, we should make it.
Seeing someone else on screen or in media who represents your lived experiences is such a big deal. So I think that's really powerful, and kudos to you for, being willing to put that all out there and share that with other people. And I want to talk about the title for a moment, Who Gets to Parent? This feels very significant and weighted right now in America today, as well as with your personal story. What made you choose the title? It's
part of understanding. So a little bit, 1 second on, so I research reproductive health disparities and equities, right? So when I started my personal reproductive journey, everything that I have, like I've read like 100 years right back. It didn't even matter if I was in the Caribbean. It didn't matter that I was in the US. It had this one tone, right? And I was the socioeconomic context, the political debates around pro-life debates, dominant narrative was like everywhere. And I was like, there's so many contradictions on, oh, we as a pro-life idea, a pro-life essence of life, yet why do I feel that I can't do this? And when I turn to other people, I turn to people, there's a way in which I get the stories that I'm hearing is that their pregnancy or their desire to have children, as a Black person, as a female person or a woman on their own, or a interracial couple, a queer couple, a same sex, like they continue that they share their experiences in such like in secrecy, or that they've had so much pain and they haven't processed it, or they're afraid to even talk about how much money they spent because they don't have a child to show, and they're afraid to share this with other people because people would say, well, you want to go make a child and you want to play God and bring in this fertility, and now you don't have anything. So then there is the issue of housing, right? People don't have safe place to live. We're all about, okay, bringing people into the world. Some people don't have great or good standard of living, like, their income is below the poverty rate, or the poverty level is very high in where they live. Their access to housing is determined on their race, on their sexuality, how they express gender, whether they're married. I'm like, the decision to parent, actually, and then you have other women sharing their experiences with me or with both of us on, well, I didn't really decide to have this child. It just happened, and I didn't really want to have abortion because I didn't really want no problems. And they literally had nothing to give this child, or even had themselves. The idea now of who gets the parent really speaks to the capabilities and the power one has to self-determine, to be present. To who gets the parent provokes questions on, when you see someone, what is their ability to say, yes, I would like to be a parent, or I would like to conceive, and what are their capabilities to protect that child, to be accountable for that child, to say, okay, well, I have to send them to school, because if I don't send them to school, I'm probably going to be jailed for not sending my child to school, but yet your job cannot afford it. Or that, people hold narratives around you being a bad person because you're queer, you're just demonic. Yeah. So all these things determine who can really parent in a healthy environment, be present in a healthy way, psychologically, mentally, emotionally, hug their child and kiss them. So everything about your identity affects your ability to self-determine and be self-possessed. And that is where those are the factors that influence the title of the name and what it holds with the series.
I think that what Pierre's bringing up at the end there, I just want to shine a little spotlight on it, which is this concept of choice. There's this point in the documentary series, we use all these kind of like flashy bubbles, which are fun on the screen. And there's like a still shot that's my favorite in the series. It says magical gay parenting choice. If the 4 bubbles, they all popped up at different points, but that's what the screen says. And I think that with that whole episode, we're talking a lot about choice. We bring up the fact that my parents chose to have me together. They said, oh, we want to have 2 children, and they made that happen. And Pierre's mom didn't get the option to choose how many kids she wanted or with whom she wanted to have them, and how so many people get to choose to have children and other people don't get to choose to have children or if to have children. And then on top of that, the idea of getting to choose your own path and how you're going to raise your kids, both contemporarily and historically, is like this luxury, right? If you're a woman, you get pregnant, you have to take that child to term, and then you have to become a parent. Or if you're infertile, or if you're queer, or whatever is in your way, you don't get to parent. And even though you might want to, you aren't allowed to adopt. You aren't, because you're a single parent or whatever it might be. And we wanted to draw draw the spotlight onto this, who gets that choice. And all of those, the getting is based on our systems, which are larger than us, as Pierre pointed out, all of the different identity questions. And then also, we wanted to put parent as a verb, not as a noun, because there's this very biological determinist view that we hold as society about what it means to parent, and that simply means you either gave an egg or a sperm to a gamete, which became an embryo, which became a fetus, which became a baby. And so whether or not you were involved in that choice for that baby to be born, you are now a parent. And even adoptive parents who have rights and they have history, people will often ask, who are your real parents, right? Even though those are your real parents. And so,
yeah, and they're consenting to be there for you, and they're consenting to love you, and they're, we are still thinking that if you don't have my genetics, then we are not your
parent. So we wanted to
real parents. We wanted to make
real parents.
Yeah.
We wanted to make a differentiation. We have this thing that we call consent-based parenting that we're emphasizing, because we want to emphasize the difference between creating a child and being a parent, or getting the right to parent, and to say that nobody should be forced to parent, just as nobody should be denied the right to parent, not in the way that they want or the way that's good for the child. And not all of us, because of, the larger systems we live in, even if we do choose to have that child and to give birth to that child and to bring it into the world, then sometimes you have to work so many jobs that you don't actually get to parent that child. Your child gets raised by the media, the streets, the schools. You aren't getting the right to raise your child in a healthy and safe environment of your choosing. So we really wanted to emphasize this idea of consent and choice, and of being, if there's a point to what we're saying, other than to share our journey, it's to advocate for parenting getting to be a choice that every parent should have the right. Nobody, no man, no woman, no non-binary person should be forced to parent or denied the right to parent. And that's really what we're trying to say.
That's so powerful. I just love the idea of parenting as a verb, not just this idea which comes with all the stigma. And Pierre, you mentioned the pro-life ideas, quote unquote pro-life. I feel like I always have to put quotes after that, and the amount of hypocrisy historically and the racism that has come with that political movement. And so as you're talking, I'm hearing what we need is reproductive justice. And that's what the reproductive justice movement stands for. All of those things, that who has the right to parent and who has that safety and support and community, or the right not to parent. And so I think that's such a beautiful issue that's interwoven into the series and what you're telling me too. As a queer couple, as a biracial couple, there are multiple intersections you're navigating when it comes to the medical system. And you touched on this just before. Let's talk about what it means to be a queer couple utilizing assisted reproductive technology. Can you talk about what is ART and how difficult it was to navigate and access in Kansas?
Yeah, absolutely. So ART, or assisted reproductive technology, or as I like to say, ART.
Everyone says that.
I know, but
not everyone, but lots of people.
I like ART because it implies this process of creation that is beautiful. It's a series of medical procedures that are designed to treat infertility, right? That's what they were designed for. And so in episode 1, we give a more full history of it, so I won't go into all of the kind of strange twists and turns of the story, but suffice it to say, there are 2 main kinds of ART that are used generally today. The first one is artificial insemination, and the second one is in vitro fertilization, so AI or IVF. So this is a medical third-party management of sperm and egg fertilization, conception. And the way that each one of them works is, in either case, sperm are taken outside of the body and preserved and kept and tested and kept in a specific place. And in artificial insemination, that sperm is taken and injected or planted into the female reproductive system inside somebody's live body. So similar to how natural conception takes place, the sperm is put into the female body. Yeah, it's assisted by a medical procedure, but the fertilization takes place in the female reproductive system in the body, whereas in vitro fertilization, you take the egg out of the female body, and you take the sperm out of the male body, and the fertilization takes place in a lab. And then once there's a viable embryo, that is implanted assistance into the female body, where hopefully it takes hold and grows into a fetus. And so we did the second one, which is IVF. And we chose that one because we wanted to use Pierre's eggs and I wanted to carry. So there was no way to do it without IVF. So that is what we did. And, maybe Pierre wants to talk a little bit more about the difficulties we faced in this process.
I mentioned earlier that you can just maybe have a conversation. You've seen someone pregnant in your house before, or you can just call them up and say, "Hey man, let me talk about this thing. Let's just stop." That wasn't an option for us because we first have to go through narratives of what our body should be like, why we want to get pregnant, or why don't we adopt. So we were like, okay, let's cut that out. And then we went to the medical practitioner, and what the medical practitioner, to be honest, that was like me saying, no, I don't want to go forward with this. Like at every step, I felt like, okay, you're telling me that I'm not fit to parent because I am going to die. You're already telling me that I'm going to die. Like you are saying, signaling things.
Let's look at it. Can I just like recontextualize that a little bit for you? Because the thing with the medical practitioner was telling you, it is so easy for you to have a baby, to be pregnant, that we're not even going to pay attention to you. And so
that's what the medical person was saying.
Remember she said that Pierre has
the childbearing hips.
Right.
So if I'm in pain, it's trying to say that my pain tolerance is higher than any other racial group, which means that if there is something that a specific complication that I am calling out for attention, then it's okay. It's going to get better. Right. So I already read what the comment that she made as neglect, right? Invoking like even Dorothy Roberts and like Loretta Ross and these authors that talk about reproductive justice and so forth. Like they already told us the context in which, or describe the context of who's giving birth, right? So when I couldn't get support from the close friends and family, and then I couldn't get support from the person who basically should be the direct contact person, which is our practitioner, our care provider, I'm like, okay, it's time to research. And this is where my research skills came in, because like being a lifelong student, oh my goodness. Yeah, like I rely on research to get me through. And first thing I found out is that this is not a concrete everyday conversation. Assisted reproductive technology or walking this journey is not just a part of like family planning conversations, right? It's like on the extremes of, okay, you want this and all else fail, but we know something else and it's in a corner of way over there.
And it's also generally reserved for the economically privileged.
After navigating those, like, okay, this is not a support system that can give me answers, I decided I'm just going to start research on my own. January 2017, 2018, I was on this rough, like, I was just, okay, is there one facility that can move us through the cryobank situation to the IVF, to the management of the pregnancy, or to the fertilization situation? No. So I'm like, okay, Timmia, we're going to break it up. So we're going to do the cryobank first, which is focus on our donor, because that's going to cost a lot of money. That's like roughly we're going to pay between $5,000 to $7,000 is going to come out our pocket just dealing with that part. And then, but before we do that, Timmia, we need to look for a place that's very LGBT friendly, and not only friendly, that starts with the assumption that parenting is not something that's like, it's not just a biological thing, right? So it doesn't make us feel that whatever we conceive is not ours. So we need a cryobank that can able to help deliver that. We need a cryobank that can understand that same-sex relationship, there are politics around it, and therefore they might need to inform us, or depending on where you live, there's policy saying who has parental right.
So we did find that place.
Yes.
We went to the Sperm Bank of California, which is a great space in Berkeley, California. Pierre found it.
Yeah.
And she sent me this website, and it's this beautifully constructed website. You can see clips of it in our series. And we thought that it was like this huge place. And it's this tiny, very personal, very sweet run. I mean, the director sat us down and gave us information and talked about her parenting journey. So by the time we finished working with this cryovac, we really felt supported by them.
And that's the first stage. Now, again, this was not easy, right? So I'm pushing through like lots of research online, people saying this, how much it costs, because I can't get this information in one place. So we returned from California. I'm like, okay, Timmia, we're ready to go in the second half of it. The second half includes basically our bodies, because we're carrying and eggs will be extracted from one of us. We need someone, an institution. So we did some more research. This is like basically calling up professors who I know work on reproductive technologies. And I was just asking questions. And I'm like, okay, I will now make my move. And that's how, and like we are graduate students. So we are like, we got that tool to do research and get its answers. But so what I'm trying to say is, if you were not trained to be a researcher and to go like asking specific questions, you wouldn't know where to start if you weren't in that position. So after we finished, I called up so many people. I was like, I introduced me to some people I knew. I'm like, listen, this is someone who wrote an article on this subject. Can we have a meeting? And, so it was something like, that's how we navigated, very like peace. And then after that, we decided on the, in Kansas, the medical institution that did the IVF management to conception, right?
Yeah. So at the University of Kansas Medical Systems, there is a specific IVF clinic, or assisted reproductive technology in general clinic, that we ended up working with over a series of years.
And
so
I should wrap this up on this point though. When we actually got to this part, another big chunk. So when we said it was difficult to access, first, if you got through the first hurdle of lack of support or lack of information, you got through those first hurdles. Now you're at the door. What's going to make you push that door is how much money you have in your pocket. What's your mental stability at this point? Are you frustrated by all this now? Do you feel you can go forward? Do you feel loved in this process? Can you actually show up without cussing everybody out and telling them what like how they're harming you?
Mm-hmm.
So like you must have, and this was known, because after the consultation or during the consultation, you for the IVF team that did the management part, bringing the embryo and the sperm together, they let us know the price for everything. Mm-hmm. Right? So you basically gotta go home and do a quick budget. Remember, this is no extra, like we're not including the cryobank. This is already paid for. This is the new part, the second part, right? So you better have 20 grand ready.
Just lying around.
Yeah, ready. And you must have medication fees, like the like maybe 5,000.
That's within the 20 grand.
You must have this to pay out. And this is like a chunk. You must have that. So when I say if it's difficult, I would like go off and say it is difficult.
And then on top of that, the last stage of inaccessibility that I would say we were encountering, you get through each one of these stages, you've got the money, you pay the money, and then the IVF clinic has all of these forms that are asking to be filled out by husband and wife. And Pierre and I couldn't figure out who was the husband and who was the wife at what point in the IVF process, because remember, Pierre went through half of the process and I went through the other half. So we filled out the forms with Pierre being the wife for part of them and me being the wife for the other part. And we send, and they're, dozens of forms. They're very long. They're very annoying. And then we send them all in, and then the IVF clinic calls us back and tells us we filled them all out wrong and we had to start all over again. But it would be so much simpler if the forms were designed for who's getting egg extract, who's carrying, like based on the actual things that we're doing, as opposed to the assumption of man and wife. There's actually a part you haven't seen it yet because these episodes are in post-production right now, but in the later episodes where we filmed me on the phone with the IVF clinic, and they say, I said, can my partner come in? And the person on the phone says, yeah, hubby is welcome. And this is like, I'm already pregnant at this point. So they know who, they have all the information over and over and over and over again. The clinic referred to Pierre as my husband, despite the fact that she'd literally given the egg. And then another thing that happened, this is actually earlier, is when Pierre was going through the first part of the medical procedure, they kept asking me for permission to do things to Pierre, even though it was her, because I was the one who was going to be pregnant. So they couldn't conceptualize that they're two bodies, even though I will say that so many of the other clients that we saw at the clinic were also queer and or trans people. So it's not that they don't have that clientele, it's just that systems have not been designed for us with us in mind. So yes, pretty inaccessible, despite how much money we paid for everything.
Yeah.
I think you just kind of summed it up with the systems are not designed for all bodies and all people and all types of relationships, which goes back to the idea, Pierre, you mentioned Dorothy Roberts and Loretta Ross, who are considered the godmothers of the reproductive justice movement. Their book is literally called Reproductive Justice. And, you know, they're outlining the way that the systems are not designed for, I mean, they're specifically talking about predominantly Black women in the United States, and what you went through, Pierre, and just those attitudes from the doctor. That's where you see, that's why we have such a high maternal mortality rate in the US, disproportionately toward Black and brown women. And so it all goes back to the system. The system needs an overhaul, and it needs to reflect the clients that are coming in. And clearly there are, you know, multiple queer people and trans couples. And so that's, it's like they need to reflect the reality of the world, and the language that we use and the systems use as well is just so, that needs to change and update a lot. So I'm really glad you focus on that in episode 4, the, you know, the systemic racism. And also you mentioned the idea of conscious and unconscious bias, whether it's racism, but also comments like, why don't you just adopt? And you talk about how, you know, some of your friends and people in your social circle, some of the comments that, you know, they'd come out with, you were surprised that, you know, they'd said certain things like, oh, why would you want to do that? Or why don't you just adopt? Or, you know, why have children? This world is going to hell in a handbasket, you know, all those kind of things. How do you navigate all those, you know, the comments and along with all the complexities of just the ART process?
I'll tell you, we just start pouring so much more love into each other and patience into each other, because we realized how alone we were on this journey. It's just like a mirror every time. Here I am. I'm the Black person. I'm the immigrant here. I'm the one that came from the working class background. I'm the one whose family wasn't even speaking to me really, or had none to offer, because homosexuality is, you know, not right, not godly, not holy. So I was on my own. Like the layers of the marginalized position which I took on just continue. And then there's Timmia. She's also affected by this. Like when she talks to family and they're like, well, why don't you use your eggs instead of Pierre eggs? Because this is now, I know exactly where that comment comes from. Pierre's body comes from a history of trauma, of it's tarnished, it's contaminated, like, you know, it's damaged inherently by being what it is in this form. So to me, I understand when people make comments like that. So it affected her negatively. I'm also her partner. And here we are realizing that we are alone. At one point, I got so angry because I'm like, why? Look again to me. Look, it's you. Even though the white presenting person here got like the least scars. And every time I go to a meeting, every time I see a medical practitioner, I feel like if I went to war and come back with scars all over my body. So what we did, we're going to drop all arms now. That's what I feel. I feel like I was going to war on this IVF journey, right? And Timmia and we meditated more. I actually turned to be real, like honest. My research just started helping me to explore traditional care practitioners who are doulas, or the people who are not midwives in the hospital, health workers who are able to talk about stuff like what rest does to the hormones, what rest does to the body in reproduction, like, you know, like bring that technical knowledge, but also not use very technical words. So I started reaching out for books. And I said to Mia, we have to do this. And we actually got to be there for each other. We went to couples therapy on like talking about reproduction and what that means. Timmia started relying on me a lot more for research and trusting the information I bring to us, and we would discuss it. We started mapping out a plan And one thing that we had, and we checked in with each other, the constant like hustle to get work done. We're like, listen, if we fail a course or we don't deliver in a particular way or we super broke because we can't take on other jobs right now, let it be, because we are only going to feel like if we need an outcome, a very specific outcome. And this pregnancy is not guaranteed. This baby is not guaranteed. So we just got to pour love right now into ourselves and into each other. We need to remember the context in which we're giving birth, and the context being very heterosexist, very racist, anti-Black racist, very classist, very ableist. It's so many narratives we are about to navigate. And I think the best thing to do for example, after we came off on the second lap of like the IVF journey, the nurse called us. It was my turn to get screening to start med treatment. And they called the phone and they asked to speak to Timmia. Timmia is not available at the moment. Then they left their name. I'm like, are you calling from here? Because I am Pere DeRoy. I'm the person who's next on in the procedure. Like, it's my body that will be going through this first. And she's like, I don't think I have permission or consent to speak with you. And it's things like that. I'm like, how can you not have that? I'm like, first of all, you didn't give me my portal. You have to be speaking for me. This is my body. Why can't you speak to me, considering that I will be writing those checks? So then at that same moment, Timmia said to me, Pierre, we will deal with this. So she went and she did what she had to do. She'll tell you a little bit about that. But then it was that moment where she stopped. And she realized that the child was like, being pregnant wasn't the thing. It was a hole in each other, because if we can't have that support for each other right now and see each other's pain, then her fighting on my behalf will not even make any sense. What would be the value, right? So she, at every moment in this process, we stop to check in and then retool to support each other. Sorry, Tim.
No, that's cool. I appreciate that. I think another reason that we wanted to make this series is because we see a lot of people either talking from a position of privilege within a racist system, or we see people talking from a position of marginality within the system. I call us interracial couple or multiracial couple instead of biracial, because I'm mixed, but I look white. So I still receive the privilege of that. I called the medical institution and yelled at them and said, exactly what Pierre said. Just, I said it. And then they apologized and talked to Pierre from then on. But she'd already said that. But I think that another thing we wanted to look at is being very transparent about, like, we literally can see the mechanisms working in the system, because we're actually talking to the same people about the same things and receiving different treatment. Because I have a pro-Black lens, I don't just think it's normal. We're able to assess, why am I receiving this treatment and why are you receiving this treatment, as opposed to assuming that doing something right and Pierre's doing something wrong, which I think is really easy to do when you're not seeing it all laid out right in front of you, based on the two different experiences with the same system.
I just want to make a comment that I wish people could see you both as I'm interviewing you now, because the love and care for each other is so tangible, and you can see it. And it really is true when they say having a child can make or break a relationship, and for you to navigate that space and be mindful about it before the child even comes along is so powerful and beautiful to see. So thank you for sharing that part. And talk about parenting as a verb. You were doing it before a child was even part of the picture, taking those intentional steps. So I wish people could see that, but hopefully they can get this through hearing your voices. Something a little bit more positive that I would love people to know about is the landscape in Kansas. I mean, everything is changing right now in the US. Everything is, every state is very different. Roe v. Wade has been overturned. And so now every kind of state is doing their own thing. Some are going backwards. Some are doing some really exciting things. But one of the things we talked about was that don't sleep on Kansas, because, they passed this major abortion rights amendment last year in 2022, which was a huge step forward. So can you talk about what's happening in Kansas? What are some of the important things that people should know about and that maybe they don't know about that are happening in Kansas?
We talk a lot about Kansas being this like secret. But again, so let's talk a little bit about the reproductive rights bills. Kansas made abortion a constitutional right years ago. And then with the overturn of Roe v. Wade, there was a referendum where they tried to overthrow that amendment so that they could pass anti-abortion legislation. And, as many people I know in Kansas said, finally, we made the news for something good. Oh my gosh. Because there's definitely a lot of other things going on in Kansas that aren't always great. But the fact that this attempt to overturn this amendment failed in a significant way, it wasn't close. It was very clearly, we want abortion to be a right, was a really big step to protect that choice that Pierre and I are talking about. Because it's not just about abortion rights. It's about the right to control your own body and your own reproductive life. And people generally simplify it to, it's the right to have an abortion. No, it's the right to actually consent to what you want to do with your body. That is really important in Kansas. And also there are provisions. Pierre was mentioning when we went to the cryobank, we've learned about second parent adoption and intent to parent. And in some places I would have had parental rights because I was the gestational parent, but Pierre wouldn't have. And in some places Pierre as biological parent would have had parental rights and I wouldn't. But because we are married in Kansas, we both, without question, became the de facto parents, is what the legal term is. So we are de facto parents. And so in both our names are on our kids' birth certificate. And there was never a question like, is there a father? None of those things were ever asked because of the de facto parental laws that exist in Kansas. But again, you have to be married. So if you're not married, there is no right to second parent adoption for queer couples without an automatic right to second parent adoption, which there are in other states. So in some places you can declare what you can get a writ from a judge, which is an intent to parent, which allows you to do second parent adoption immediate, as opposed to in other states where one person would be the de facto parent and then the other person would have to go through an entire adoption process to become second parent, sometimes even if they're married. So it's really all over the place in the states, as you say, about what is legal. But I will tell you, in Kansas, being a queer female-sexed couple who are married, it was very easy for us to get those rights to parent our child, those legal rights to parent our child. And we were very grateful for that because it was one less thing to stress about.
Yeah. And even like not necessarily on the policy, like the part of it, the legal part of it, is just that type of interactions as well. And I'm also a little bit patient. I know Timmia is not as patient as I am because she's like pregnant and she went into the room. She was constantly asked, "What are you having, a boy or a girl?" Right? And Timmia's like, "We're having a child." Was a female child or a male child. So Timmia would come home and say, "Why don't these practitioners in this with so much more information emerging on sexuality, on gender, on sex, and why are they not understanding this?" And we know as queer people how these gendering can affect your life, right? Like we understand the adverse effect of this, even the like not so adverse. But one thing I want to say, like there are like 2 instances which just made me feel like Kansas is gonna get better, or 3 actually. One is my doula, the doula that we recruited or hired to work with us. She basically focused on queer and trans BIPOC populations, right? So she came with a history of knowledge about what is it like for this population, and really empowered, give childbirth education and whatnot. So that was 1. 2, when Timmia was giving birth. Now this shouldn't have happened, but it did. While Timmia was in labor, they were asking Timmia, "Is it a boy or a girl?"
Oh, they did?
Yes.
Don't remember this.
Oh my gosh. Probably because you were in labor.
Exactly. You were on the table, like you were on the bed, right? Sorry.
I was in labor for 23 hours.
Right. And then I looked at the
Yeah.
doula and the doula looked at us and she was already there. And we're like, "We are not gendering." the baby. It's a baby at this moment, and we're happy to have a baby. But the same doctor that asked this question, and she said, and I was proud of that moment, even though it angered me. She's like, I am sorry. You are right. You are having a child, and it has an assigned sex, and we don't know the gender of the child.
Yeah.
And for me, she did this in the presence of other persons in that room. And to me, that basically is a signal for where Kansas is going in terms of like she taking that position, saying, you're right. The third thing that I thought about, I got a few things that happened that really let me know that you don't sleep on Kansas, but you can keep sleeping, so you leave Kansas alone. Like when Roe v. Wade was turned, like we were in contact with our IVF team. So even when they haven't invested resources into the narratives or who's giving birth, at the same time, they're like, we are going to let you know what's happening with your embryo. And they were in constant communication with us, or not really constant, but let us know there was transparency on what that outcome is. And they said that they were fighting to ensure that our rights are protected.
Just to remember one thing about these sweeping anti-abortion legislations that are happening around the country, some of them make it impossible to destroy an embryo.
Right. Yes, this affects IVF and fertility treatments.
It's very, very, very problematic for IVF clinics because, for example, we have 5 frozen embryos right now. We do not want 5 more children.
Right.
Probably. Who knows?
No, maybe that's a separate conversation.
But the point is that we also don't want anybody else to use these embryos if we decide not to use them because they're ours.
Right.
Some people do embryo adoption, which is their choice. But anyway, the point is it puts you in a lot of risk as a couple going through IVF to have somebody be able to seize your genetic material and just off with it if there were certain laws passed.
Yeah.
So we were really happy that the IVF clinic was transparent about that and also told us they're fighting to protect our rights and all of those good things.
Yeah, that was good to know. And another thing I find on wrapping up on the support, right? Because of that legal, and this is why reproductive justice matters so much, because I can see how the interpersonal interactions of practitioner, even in the classroom, everywhere, continues to push, because this legal framework continues to push as well and expand. And then their interpersonal interactions affecting the policies, and then they're expanding each other, because as a graduate student, we all know TTAs or graduate teaching assistants don't make no sort of money. So in our series, we said how we raise the money. We said, we did different jobs, we did consultancies, we work around the clock, right? Like for 2 years, just saving and saving and saving. But when it was time, to me, it was near due, the department and the University of Kansas was the most ready to ensure me as a laborer, so to speak. They're like, okay, tell us, you need leave. You have to get paternity leave, parental leave. They did not say maternity leave or just try to make, they were understanding a different, your
language.
Yeah, right. Like, you are about to have a child and you got to be there as well. Yeah. They even work with me, plan with me ahead, talk about the course. They're like, also, babies will come when babies will come. So let's plan with a few weeks here and there in case you have to leave before or maybe after a particular deadline. So I got paid leave off for 6 weeks. I mean, people get months, but listen, this is
America. We'll take it.
Right. So it's like those little wins. And for a minute, I did not feel like this was not, even though it's a little small thing, the fact that everything was seen through a queer lens, everything was seen through an anti-racist lens for me, and to me, an anti-classist lens. And I was looking to see how they were meeting me at these different points. They showed up. My department basically is turned to be my support system. This is what I call family now. Oh wait, we can't sleep on this. Listen, to me, is that He lives in Kansas.
Yes, let's talk
Right.
about Tim.
Yeah. Timmia does lives in Kansas, and Timmia might want to say anything, but okay, go ahead.
No, I was going to just give the caveat that my dad currently is with our kid, and they may walk in any minute because he gave us
All
an
good.
hour. So just so you know, we might start.
Yes, we are going. We'll wrap up quickly, but everything you're saying is so important. So
yeah, I want to show this man out, right? No, I also want to show to the other professors that sent me text messages literally every day to say, Pere, you got this. Pere, you can do this. Pere, you can do this. Like, just giving me that support. This has nothing to do with the academy, but they're showing up because they understand the disparities that exist. But to me, is that this man basically challenged everything that we talk about narratives about who can do what. When we said we wanted to become parents, he's like, yeah, that's right, all right. And then he's like, okay, so how are you gonna do this? He has no idea about IVF, and we told him. He's like, okay, and then he's like, it's gonna be very expensive, and sometimes you may come up short. He's like, I got you covered. He would do his own research and then have conversations with us. He didn't put the burden on us. This is one, like I always say, like, oh my goodness, this is a white man, like a white man, and the heterosexual man, and here I am. I always feel a way, in like, and then
so he helped teach Pere how to give me shots. So one of the things we had to go through for IVF, both of us, is months of hormones.
Yeah.
Hormonal shots. So for Pere to stimulate egg growth and release the eggs, and then for me to stimulate womb development so they would be ready for the embryo and then keep the embryo alive. So my dad, Pere's afraid of needles. She's afraid of being stuck by needles. She's afraid of giving people shots. So my dad taught Pere how to give me shots. Then he was there throughout the pregnancy, being very supportive and helpful to both of us. He was there the night that I went into labor. He drove us to the hospital. He was the first person to hold our kid. I have a large extended family, and there were lots of people who asked what we consider to be inappropriate questions. But as Pere said in the documentary, my dad asked a lot of questions, but not the ones that we think are annoying.
Yeah, he did not, and this is what I told Timmia, and this is why I am a little bit more patient when it comes to this, like having an intersectional lens and growing. Because I look at this guy and he just showed up because he understands these are two people making a decision. He showed up for us.
And still shows up.
And when I look at institutions around us, all you have to do is decide to show up for people. And then when you decide with that mentality, you will bring the resources to match that. Meaning, if you have queer people coming, trans people coming, get the training of your staff in order. Persons of color, Black populations, BIPOC population will come here and be afraid of you because of what has historically been done. Then you know what you do? You show up and you bring your resources to sensitize, to match their energy, because they are in need of that care right now because they're coming to your door. So when I look at the support that he gave, our doula showed us how to wash the baby, to swaddle the baby, right? To touch the baby, like touch, right? But he held the baby and I was right there and he's like, are you ready? He was so patient because I was actually really and truly alone in that room. It was Timmia, and I was relying on her network of family or the people that she brought me into. And I basically, was there alone. And here he was. He just like showed up. And I always think of allyship. When I think of him, I just think about allyship and the ways in which we brought him along this journey. Yeah. And he showed up every time. And he is far from every time we tell him something, he's like, what? Okay, what is that? Because he's like so far. But now he goes and he buys the book. He'll read it. And then he's, yeah. So I just think that's something I would like to, when I think of this docuseries, to me, think of it, we're not trying to call out what people already know exists. We're actually using it as an advocacy tool. Like, this is what's happening. And what use this, like, this is people saying, this is us saying, hey, this is a situation. We already know what it is. So can we now, here are some ways in which hurt has occurred. We have tools to fix it. There's so many tools to fix these.
I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but I love how your doula, calling out the doctor in that moment, your dad showing up and being an ally, and your university colleagues saying, what do you need? We've got you. I mean, that community is really where the change happens, and where you could speak to those systems and say, hey, don't ask that question, or you should know this. So that's really wonderful. Well, the last two questions I have, what do you want? Well, okay, one of them is a two-parter and one of them is, the last question. But the two-parter is, what do you want viewers to know about this series? And what kind of hope do you want to give other queer couples who are watching it?
So depending on who the viewers are, I think that, we really want to encourage medical practitioners and people who are involved in the health system to examine their assumptions and their biases and their training methods so that they can be inclusive and so that they can be not racist and not sexist and
not essentialist.
And that's the second thing that I really want to say is I think that for me, I think for both of us, I think I speak for both of us, a large part of this series is trying to get our viewers, all of our viewers, queer and not queer, to think of family in a different way. Instead of thinking of family as biological determinist family, think about family as a choice and as a building block and as a thing that is based on consent. You get told your whole life, that's your sister, that's your cousin, that's your aunt, that's whoever, you should be nice to them. And we think that family are the people who stick up for you no matter what, and who you choose to be in community with,
who you learn with, who you grow with, who wants to see you.
Our kid is no more Pierre's kid because they're biologically related to Pierre, and I am no more naturally equipped to be a parent because I gave birth,
because of your white passing position, or that you might show more femininity more than me, or
there's a lot of essentialism that goes into motherhood. In fact, Pierre and I don't even use the name mama or mother in what we call ourselves as parents, partly to distance ourselves from this essentialized idea of, mother knows best. I think that people learn to parent. We weren't good at it when we started. We are getting better at it because we're learning and because we're committed to raising this beautiful human being.
I really do want, while I'm focused on people living with disabilities or different abilities, there's so many different marginalized populations are marginalized because of the narratives imposed on us of who we can be and what we can be. But this particular series, there's a way in which queer identities with different physical bodies, different mental positions, they don't get a chance to say they want to aspire to parent. We've existed for such a long time to just survive getting the job, survive our family not kicking us out as soon as they hear we're queer or trans or LGBT, So we're constantly, even into our 60s and 70s, in this mode of just survival. And parts of our right to health, our right to continues to be ignored because we think that that's too much for us to even aspire. But that's a part of our journey as a human. So I really would like this series to give comfort, right? While it's informative, but also know that this shouldn't be. And if you are having feelings to parent, you should have that right respected. And I hope you can find resources the same way. It's not going to be easy for the next 50 years. That's how I see it. But I hope that this series can inspire. I hope this series can let people know that they shouldn't deal with discrimination. They shouldn't deal with being ousted or put in the corner as if that's their fault.
Yeah.
Right?
Just because of who they are.
Yeah. Yeah. You should not be treated badly because of how your color of your skin, the length of your arms or your physical body, who you have, you're sexually attracted to, how you want to dress, or the genitalias you have. This is not your fault. You didn't do anything. It's the narratives in which we hold, the beliefs we hold that continues to make people vulnerable and marginalized. So I hope this series can really force us as a society to think critically about the context in which people are giving birth and the conditions, and ask the question, are we really giving this person the chance to parent in a verb, using the verb like to parent? So I feel like that's what we want with this series.
Amazing. And how would you answer the question? The title is Who Gets to Parent? How would you answer that question? Who gets to parent according to Pierre and Timmia?
First, very short one is, at this moment, if you are cisgender, if you're heterosexual, if you are middle class, upper middle class, if you're living in a global north location, if you are religious and very religious from the major religious groups, so Christian or Islam or Hindu, and depends on which part of the world you are again, but Christian mostly. If you are those things, and if you are physically able-bodied and mentally able-bodied with grit, you are fit to be a parent. Now, I'm going to turn that over and say you are fit to be a parent if you are ready to hold the world accountable, to give yourself permission, to love yourself, to show up, and to desire to be a parent. You are fit to be a parent. You're fit to be a parent if you want to show up and say, hey, the facilities around, everything around us, from the economic system to the educational system to the political system, we all have a role of reproduction, of social reproduction, caring for new people. And I feel like people who wants to walk that journey, they are fit to be a parent, and that's anyone.
Yeah, that's powerful. I think just flipping that narrative on its head like you just did is what we need to see more of. And I feel like viewers are going to see that through your series, see, your candid experience and your vulnerability and the love, and the love and dedication it takes to become a parent and be a parent is really, really, it's tough, but it's so rewarding to see that there are people out there who are willing to help and be part of that community. So best of luck with the rest of the episodes as you release them and work on those.
Thank you.
And please keep us informed of all the work that you're doing, all the advocacy. We are going to support you with rePROFilm and share all the work that you're doing. So
thank you.
Thank
We
you
really
so
appreciate
much.
this moment as well. We really appreciate this. I know in the month of June like we know what that really means. And for different people, it's just being present. Like, wow, we are here witnessing this freedom right now. Restricted freedom in some cases, but still a vibe, We appreciate doing this interview with us. And we do have things in stock, and we're catering to queer and trans BIPOC populations. So we hope to continue to share, and we thank you.
Give a quick shout out.
Yeah.
One of the things that Pierre did when she had the experience of seeing me in labor for 23 hours and felt very helpless. I don't remember much of it, but she does. Pierre went and learned to be a doula and studied to become a doula and became part of the Doulas for Douglas County network.
Amazing.
In Lawrence. And we have decided that we're launching, we have launched sort of a soft launch, a business called Who Gets to Parent, where we'll be using Pierre's research skills and my storytelling skills.
That's the name of the organization.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And that, whogetstoparent.com will launch. So if you are interested in contacting us or talking more to us about what can your organization actually do to make these changes, or if you're interested in a queer and trans-centric BIPOC doula, hey. So we just want to thank you. Thank you for the support, and happy Pride Month, y'all.
I felt like we really went on a journey in that interview, and I certainly learned so much. So please make sure you take the time to watch the episodes of Who Gets to Parent featured in this month's periodical by heading to reprofilm.org. Share this episode with a friend and help us spread the rePROFilm message and mission. The rePROFilm podcast is executive produced by Mama Film, hosted and produced by me, Asha Dahya, and edited by Kylie Brown, with original music by Paris Jane and Maurice Anthony. The periodical is programmed by Neha Aziz and written by Emily Christensen. Alex Gambati is our social media manager, and Rebecca Sosa is our distribution and impact strategist. You can find us on social media at rePROFilm on Instagram and at rePROFilmFest on Twitter. Bye for now and happy Pride!